Welcome back. President Trump will sign an executive order today on debanking. That's when a bank closes down someone's accounts for political reasons. The White House has confirmed media reports on today's order. A post by White House Deputy Press Secretary Harrison Fields says Trump believes no American should be denied access to financial services because of their political or religious beliefs. In an earlier interview with CNBC, the president said that he himself was a target of debanking. And Trump is also set to sign an executive order that could make it easier for 401k plans to offer alternative investment options, including private equity. Workplace retirement plans are a $12 trillion market, and the private equity and credit industry are pushing to get in. To date, 401k plans have primarily offered publicly traded stock and bonds funds because they're less expensive and less risky. Right now, there's no official policy guidance to employers on how to provide access to alternative options. Joining us now to discuss the president's expected executive order targeting banks that drop customers for political reasons is Executive Director of Consumers Research, Will Hild. Good to have you on today, Will. You've called it debanking by design. Indeed. Good to have you. So you've called it debanking by design. What have you seen in your research into this issue that may echo the president's own grievances?
Well, this is an issue that was cutting across broad swaths of America, and banks were hiding behind so-called KYC regulations, know your customer regulations, to basically deny that debanking was happening. And so having the president announce that he himself had been a victim of debanking, and then having the CEO of Bank of America, Brian Moynihan, admit that in fact that is what occurred, is a huge, huge watershed moment in the fight against debanking, because now we can actually be honest that this was a real issue that Americans, especially conservative Americans, were dealing with. And now having the president issue an executive order to push back against this, we wait with bated breath to find out what it is, because it's much needed.
Yeah, that executive order was expected to be signed at midday, so it should be happening at any point soon. It's reported that it would, in part, direct federal banking regulators to remove concepts like reputational risk from their internal guidance materials, as well as reinstating accounts that have been removed illegally. How could removing reputational risk impact the banking industry?
It's a great question. Originally, reputational risk from a banking regulation standpoint was supposed to refer to the reputation of the bank itself for actually having the money that it was supposed to have. Because if people start to get the idea that a bank is, going insolvent, you end up with a bank run. And so it was twisted, that reputational risk definition was then twisted to mean the reputation of the bank having certain types of customers that were politically disfavored. This is a complete adulteration of what the term was supposed to mean, and it allowed the banking system to be weaponized against conservatives, both conservative politicians, but sometimes just people who were running organizations that were disfavored, or even industries that were disfavored, like under the Obama administration when they debanked fireworks retailers. So this is an issue that has been ongoing for over a decade, and it has really reached a fever pitch during the Biden administration. And so it is fantastic to see action being taken. And we hope that not only will people's accounts be restored, that the regulators who engaged in this kind of activity and the banks that engaged in this type of activity will pay a price, so that in future situations where people might be tempted to use the financial industry to punish their political enemies, they'll think twice about it because of the consequences that could befall them.
Now, it's been reported also that the order would direct investigations into potential violations of credit, antitrust, and consumer protection laws by financial institutions. Do you expect this to be challenged in court?
I have no doubt that the banks who are targeted for prosecution for their own targeting of conservatives with debanking will probably try to say that they were forced into it by regulators. And that'll be obviously a fact-specific question. Maybe they were threatened to the extent that they really didn't have a choice. I find that very dubious defense. You have CEOs like Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan Chase, and particularly Brian Moynihan, CEO of Bank of America, who are amongst the wokest in the country. And particularly Moynihan has pushed his bank to basically be a political utility for the Democratic Party. So the idea that he was strong-armed into debanking the president and others just doesn't pass muster with the facts on the ground. And so I think it is a situation where they were working in tandem with regulators rather than just simply under their thumb. So it's possible, but I expect them to challenge it. But I think that those who prosecute these crimes or these, under this executive order should be very suspicious of the claims that these banks didn't engage in it willingly.
And just from what we know so far in the reported materials out there about this executive order, how effective do you think it could be at addressing the problem as you see it? And what more, if anything, do you think needs to be done?
Yes, I hope that it's going to be very effective, especially if it's followed by prosecutions by the Department of Justice. More does need to be done because as this whole story unfurled, we saw that both under the Obama administration and the Biden administration, the executive was basically directing their bureaucrats to push for this. So what we really need is Congress to act and ensconce protections around citizens' rights to the financial system in law, so that when banks are pushed to debank conservatives or anyone for any political reason, they can point to prohibitions on that in statute, and that a future president who might be inclined to encourage debanking can't just repeal President Trump's executive order and then push through this. So we really need this ensconced in law for both administrations, Democrat or Republican.
Lastly, Will, in light of ongoing accusations of financial cancel culture, banks in recent months have been updating their policies and meeting with officials, and the Wall Street Journal says that they say their decisions are based on legal, regulatory, and financial risks. What will you be watching for in particular if the anticipated executive orders sign and set in action on this front?
We're going to hope that banks will get the message and fix their own problems and politicization, but I don't trust any of these bankers inherently. Their actions, even during the first Trump administration, have proven that they do pick sides politically. They don't just go with whoever is in power. Even as bad as that would be, it's worse than that. They do pick a side. They have lent themselves towards being a political utility for the Democratic Party. So we're going to be looking to make sure that they're really cleaning up their act, that they're not just pretending to, and really hold them accountable, as we've been doing over the last 8 to 10 years.
Great. Thanks so much for your time today, Will Hild. Great to speak with you.
Great to be with you.